Streaming in from Scottsdale, Arizona, this is Plugged In. Alongside my co-host, President of Cornerstone Advisor Steve Williams.
Hey, Al.
I'm Al Dominic, partner at Cornerstone Advisors, who counts the bicentennial of this country as my birth year. Now, I throw that out so that as people listening do the math, I can introduce Collyn Gilbert, somebody who has, I think, done a fair share of calculations in her career. So we want to welcome Collyn, who wears a lot of swag. I don't know if she's rocking any of the Valley Bank stuff at the moment, but she's the EVP, Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer of this really awesome $54 billion and growing institution on the East Coast. So, Collyn, it's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, really interesting background. I'm excited to have this discussion, Al.
Is Collyn excited for the discussion?
I am very excited. Thank you both for having me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
We're gonna have some fun, I think, over the next 20 minutes or so. You've been in some really interesting positions. You've seen different opportunities for businesses to grow and really challenge what they're known for. So Steve and I thought we'd hop right into this conversation by thinking about the dynamic that exists in banks today. You know, a large institution has the challenge of running and protecting its existing organization while thinking about the future and where it could really push for change and opportunities. So we were geeking out on some Tom Petty.
We love Tom Petty.
We love Tom Petty. He's got a great album called Full Moon Fever, and one of the classic tracks starts with, "In a world that keeps on pushing me around, I'll stand my ground and I won't back down." You know that song, Steve.
Yeah. I'm going to be a bank. I'm going to still drive shareholder value. I'm not embarrassed to be a bank, right?
Exactly. So we want to take that inner Tom Petty of yours, Collyn, and ask, how do you prioritize competition headwinds, these unexpected changes that are hitting the banking space as we head towards 2023?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not easy. And I think, starting with kind of what you alluded to, Steve, is that we're in the banking industry. We should be proud of that. But at the same time, and I used to always characterize, the industry as it, and it's not my own characterization, it's a reality. It's a commoditized industry. So the ability for differentiation is really hard. I think it's a challenge. And so here we sit, and I think finding the opportunities to truly differentiate are becoming harder and harder. And I think that's where we're spending our time, or I've certainly been spending my time in this role, is really understanding what is it that we, Valley, are good at, and what is the key differentiator there. So it kind of connects all the things in terms of competition, headwinds, and the likes. But I think it's really understanding what our value proposition is, who we are at our core. I mean, we hear this not just from banks, but from companies in general, is what is the why and what people doing? What's that shared purpose? I mean, there's a lot of that, I think, that's come out of the pandemic and just some soul searching that's happened for organizations. And I think, interestingly, banks are doing the same thing. I mean, we're really trying to figure out, what is our why and how are we beating our competition? And it's not so simple as the products and services that we offer, because frankly, it's all the same. So we have to think even beyond that. So that's the challenge that we're facing at Valley, and I think the industry should be facing in general. And part of the reason which drew me to come to this side of the business is because I think there's a huge inflection point that's happening with the industry and needing to think very differently about how we approach our business and our customers and the whole thing.
I love that term. I came to the side. For everybody out there, very interesting background, Collyn, in terms of you being an equity analyst on the bank side, watching banks, rating them. And then I'm looking at your Q3, great Q3 for Valley. Great earnings, up over 16%. I love this, 45 basis point margin expansion, 39% efficiency ratio. And then you watch the stock like this, because that's what's happening with banks right now. So here's my fun question for you. What don't all your former colleagues on the equity analyst side not get about what it's like to operate a bank? What does it feel like, what you call inside the belly of the bank now? What should they understand? Maybe you've been enlightened
Steve,
to.
It is hard, and which is the appreciation and part of the reason for me to have made the jump. You spend your entire career assessing something from the outside and applying some level of criticism or analysis, but until you're really on the inside and understand all the components of what drives an organization, it's a whole different ball game. So I mean, I say it and I answer that in one simple word. It's hard, but it is an area just for me and individually that I've spent, I've been here for almost 2 years, and for the first year of it, I have spent nearly all of my time really understanding the operational part of it. And I think that in order for us to figure out, where we want to invest on a go forward basis and allocate resources and where are our competitive advantages, I think we have to start with how are we run and where can we bring innovation and optimization on how we're run. So it is it's not easy. I have so much respect for bankers, more than I would have ever had.
Right, exactly.
10 years ago.
Tease up our next song, right?
It does, because Run DMC probably coined this just for Valley as we're talking about it. It's a song that says it's tricky to rock a rhyme. To rock a rhyme that's right on time. It's tricky.
Banking's tricky.
So, unfortunately, Cornerstone's marketing budget isn't large enough for us to stream these songs. But, think about what Run DMC said in terms of what Collyn is talking about. If you haven't paid attention to their attempts to be more purpose-driven, more community-focused, to do things that separate themselves from others, they just launched a community lending platform that I think is pretty cool. It's all around providing more financial products, resources, and connections to women and minority-owned businesses. That's impressive in and of itself, but take us behind the scenes and talk a little bit about how you and the team were able to architect a strategy, execute it in a timely fashion, attract and retain the types of talent you need to pull something like this off, all while continuing to run the business that you've already established.
Yeah, it's it's a great question, and I think a great area to sort of dig into. And I think it started, as you alluded to, with our purpose and kind of going back to what is our value proposition. I think we have to be thinking about, we need to be offering a service or a solution to our customers that can't be solved with technology, right? Because at least not in the next decade. Maybe we can have aspirations to be much more competitive in that realm in 20 to 30 years from now. But in the next decade, that's not where our competitive advantage lies. So looking and really being a partner to our communities, I think that's an area where we can thrive. I mean, we have 200 plus retail branches that are big, they're monuments in a lot of these communities. And I think our ability to connect that presence and that commitment to the community, our mission is give people and businesses the power to succeed. And I think it starts there. It definitely starts with our communities. And you think about it too, one of the other benefits that I think we have as a bank, and certainly as Valley, is sort of that sustainable service and being with our customers through that long journey. So starts at the communities, starts in the small business, and just the ability to grow with them and be their partner through a lot of this, I think is really an area too that we can compete far greater certainly than a lot of these. I mean, I don't know if we want to get into the whole fintech area. It's lovely to be talking about it now as a bank, what we've observed for the last couple months. But the volatility that comes with a lot of these other areas, there's something to say for banking and its sort of steady commitment to its stakeholders.
I think it's cool that you got this initiative off the ground, because clearly it doesn't move the dial from an EPS standpoint the next 6 quarters or something, but you rallied the team around where this fits into the overall strategy. And I see a lot of institutions trying to reinvent what does it mean to be community focused. And it's not the...
I think that...
Go ahead.
No. That's a great point, Steve. And I think that's something that we need to think about, because at the end of the day, from a financial perspective, right, it's not going to have nearly as much of an impact. It's not a big enough market. Obviously, we're talking about, individually smaller credits, smaller banking relationships. So you're absolutely right in what is going to be the impact that it's going to have, maybe less so on our balance sheet, but much more so in our kind of commitment to our mission and our purpose. And so I think you, as an organization, whether you're, whatever type of company you are, I think the balancing of all of your stakeholders is a challenge. And I think it needs to be at the forefront of a lot of the decisions that you're making.
Yeah, I love it. Which gets to strategy, right?
It does get to strategy. And I'm not going to worry, Collyn, we are going to get into some fintech talk in a moment. But before we do, as we're discussing the business of banking, it's easy to have an opinion when you don't have a responsibility. I was thinking about how people on the outside can look in and say, man, you could have done something different. We don't have a time machine. We don't have a future machine. We don't know if a decision we made is right or wrong, but you make it and you pivot off of it based on the results. We're at that point of the year where people are looking ahead to 2023. They're feeling strategic. They're feeling good. So if I listen to Twisted Sister, and they're singing about having a right to choose it because they're not going to take it anymore.
A great New York area band, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that you preface it with, if I listen to Twisted Sister. Clearly you are listening to Twisted Sister to reference a quote
at the
from one of
Hyatt
their
Place Hotel
lyrics.
in the shower this morning. You were
It was
probably
wonderful.
listening to
It was wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
The people next to me were just delighted with my voice.
Yeah.
But I want to ask Collyn, having sat at the seat that needs to think about the positioning of the bank, how do you keep your strategic planning from becoming just a glorified budgeting activity?
Right.
Yeah, I think you have to look at it in a couple different ways. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the strategic decisioning that we're making is longer term, right? It takes time to build. I mean, to your point, Steve, or the discussion around our community banking effort, that is going to take time to really build and become more robust. And similarly to how we're thinking about the small business banking. So, making investments in areas where we know the growth journey is going to be a lot longer. That's one consideration. I think another consideration is how we're prioritizing investments with some of our niche businesses, which could offer a little bit more of a near-term return. And then there's the strategic part of just optimization and resource allocation, which I think goes to your point more around the budgeting, right? In terms of how we're financing or funding some of these initiatives. So I think you've got to kind of segment in a kind of three different buckets around it. But I think, if we are making strategic decisions based on our budget, then we're missing the mark and we're not creating value longer term. But it is again, having sat in an analyst seat, or we've got to make sure whatever it is that we're doing is delivering value either in the near term or long term, and we have to find ways to measure that and hold ourselves accountable to that.
I love the capital allocation discussion. I have big fans of Chris Nichols at South State and how they have kind of a capital allocation transparent competition as part of planning. But I think that spirit of transparency is important, which every business unit can see. Here's what I'm investing and here's what I'm getting back. But some of this is long-term stock buy and hold, and some of this is dividend stock. I think that spirit is going to be really cool for the regional banks to get better at going forward.
Yeah,
totally
absolutely.
agree.
And the one thing I would add to that too, and I think Valley sits in a unique spot, and I think it's maybe underappreciated, is that we do have the diversification too, which helps to complement. We have businesses that are going to complement each other during various parts of the cycle. We have a large residential mortgage business and consumer business, which when that's out of favor, then our commercial business emerges, or so there's different components of when you start to really extract value in some of these complementary businesses. And I think thinking about that holistically is kind of key too.
That's where the equity analyst can add a lot of value. Kind of how do I get that perfect model business line portfolio, right? That gives you the best valuation.
I like how you don't want to get sideways with the analyst community. Anyone who's listening is like, Steve Williams, I'm going to have to take a look at what he has to say. All right, so you outed me on my shower music this morning. I'm sure you were...
Snyder. The beautiful Dee Snyder. Yes.
Okay, your music knowledge is impressive, but I'm sure you were like singing along with Toto as they were talking about Africa. So, and I won't even ask Collyn what she was listening to. Maybe that'll be the next track. But, hey, Steve, we've talked about what's going on outside the U.S., and Collyn mentioned the fintechs that are happening here. I think this is a great opportunity for the three of us to say what's making us stop and look out of our normal comfort zone. Who's pushing the definition of opportunities? Who's looking at banking not necessarily as a boring commodity, not as a utility company, not as something that's just a dumb pipe that's providing access to cash or taking deposits. I look at Nubank down in Latin America, and I'm just fascinated with their growth story. In the U.S., Chime could be a growth monster like Nubank if they wanted to. You look at companies, you look at fintechs. What is kind of getting you excited? And then, Collyn, I'm going to ask you maybe the flip side, which is, where are you thinking folks got a little ahead of themselves?
I'm really excited. Something Collyn mentioned, and Tom Brown mentions this from Second Curve. The new diversity of these mid-sized commercial and regional banks, how they're picking niches and they're scaling them, but they're doing it in a modern way. So I love the fact that you've got a First Republic that's an upscale bank, but now it's getting more edgy in terms of how to integrate RIA. Everybody talks about Live Oak building a national SBA platform. So I think what's cool is the modernization of niches across traditional banking, because I think that's got legs. And to what people call, we've got a knowledge edge here, so with our niche, that you can't just turn that into an algorithm, or you can't make it a smart contract on the blockchain that easily. So I think it's sustainable.
Yeah. All right. So Collyn, give me the contrarian standpoint to what Steve just
well,
said.
I'm sorry, Al. It's not actually contrarian. I totally agree with Steve in that. I think the areas of opportunity need to be where, Steve, you say modernization or however you want to define it, where you're supplementing what the bank is already doing and just making it better. And I think one area that I think we still need to crack in a much more sort of strategic, I think, an impactful way is really around real estate. I mean, you're seeing it with PropTech and CREtech, but innovation has not yet come in great form to the real estate space, but yet real estate is at the forefront of what so many banks do. So I think finding solutions and partnerships within the PropTech and CREtech space, I think is frankly where I'd like to see us kind of evolve more. And it goes back to being mindful too of being franchise value additive. And I think, and then there's obviously the partnerships that just allow you to optimize kind of the day-to-day, the low value, the high production, low value component to it. So there's that. But I do think in terms of thought partners, I think there's a lot of innovation that still can come more to the PropTech and real.
I agree. At CRE, there's been a lot of folks saying, I'm going to be the CRE portal and we don't need CRE originators. And I've seen that fail for over a decade. I still think when you think about like the data you could get with rent rolls and payments and scale that up and have a smarter commercial real estate industry, I think you're right. We're like in the first inning there.
Yeah, another thing that we think about and we need to is just how that the generational transfer of wealth, right? And so that's going to happen obviously on the consumer side as well as on the business side. And so one of the things is that understanding and being progressive in that generation of real estate developers or customers might not be looking for that automated sort of more efficient solution, but they're the next family member that's going to take on that wealth or take on that business is going to be much more progressive in the way that they're thinking about the banking relationship. So, that's another area of opportunity, I think, for sure, to try to get ahead of that.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense.
It does. And so I think this is a nice way to invite Collyn to take us home with our last artist. This is somebody that will be known to everyone, one-hit wonder, but still cashing those checks. I mentioned that Collyn recently became the chief marketing officer on top of being the chief strategy officer. Is that a fair way of representing your role?
A lot of hats, yeah.
Yep.
Well, she's got a long title, but she does have a lot of responsibility. And I know Ira and the team respect her or they wouldn't have done this. But you could walk into a meeting and say, to the extreme, I rock a mic like a vandal, light up the stage and watch me wax a chump like a candle. That's Vanilla Ice and Ice Ice Baby. So using
a brand in himself.
A brand in himself that has some durability and sustainability. So Collyn, if I use Vanilla Ice as inspiration for this last question, how do you think about a bank like Valley leveraging its brand in finding inspiration from outside of the financial sector to see new opportunities?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, and I used to say this all the time following the industry, is it's got to be around data. And I think, having, and I would, the amount of data that banks hold today and knowledge of their customer is extraordinary. I mean, it's extraordinary. The gap is the ability to extract that data and do something with it. And so I think that's the opportunity, certainly for Valley. I mean, it's on our roadmap, our strategic roadmap. It could be the number one priority where we're sitting. But I think there's significant power in really rationalizing and using AI tools and doing so much with data and providing that solution to the customer before they even know they need that solution. I mean, it seems kind of basic and simple, but I don't think it's something that banks historically have been very good at. I mean, they're good order takers, but not good at anticipating where their customers and clients' needs are going.
What's interesting as you say this, I was reading about Apple potentially getting into the health insurance space in 2024. And the impetus behind this is everyone, it seems, wears an Apple Watch. So they already have a lot of self-reported information. So what if they could blend and marry some of the underwriting that goes on with the insurance side with the data that is already being provided by their consumer? So it becomes a virtuous cycle. And I don't want to get into the privacy side of the health sector. We know that's a whole other, can of worms. But that's what I get excited about when I think Apple's already a massive brand and they have opportunities to do even more, and they create value for their customers in ways that the customer doesn't think about today, but could really quickly prize once they see the application of it.
Well, and that's what's a little sad. Where bankers are is, Valley could be doing a ton of single-family mortgages and not grabbing that one field that says, I'm a self-employed business owner, and pushing that right into a business lead. So it's that kind of stuff I think you're getting at. Like, there's so much we can go after right away with even not AI, just I.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. And the behavioral analytics. I mean, what you just described, Al, with Apple and using obviously behavior of their customers to determine the impact that it's going to have on some of the healthcare industry. And that's what we have such insights into customer behavior and trends and transaction trends. And there's a lot there. It's just part of the challenge for the industry is you're still sitting on, old archaic systems that aren't talking to each other. And that's a whole separate battle. And we're undertaking a conversion right now to be in a better place. But I don't know. I think it's an exciting opportunity.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a bit of kind of the fintech downturn. I think it's important we don't kind of dance in the end zone as fintech struggle as much as figure out where we can partner and add value. But I think it gives the banking industry time to get on with it with digital origination, digital sales, and also using data better. So 23 should be a real year of catch up, I think, in those areas that, Collyn, you're mentioning. And it's where marketing and strategy come together.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yep. All right, Steve, let's give Collyn our thanks.
Thank you, Collyn.
Thank you, Collyn. We really appreciate you taking the time to get plugged in with Steve Williams and Al Dominic.
I loved it. Thank you both. It was terrific.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Sounds good.